Today, I'm honoured to host Elliott Wald, a master trainer in hypnosis, NLP, and modern psychology, celebrated for his transformative work as a clinical hypnotherapist. Trained at the London College of Clinical Hypnosis and certified as a master and trainer of NLP under Dr. Richard Bandler, the legend himself, Elliott's unique abilities have transformed the lives of celebrities and everyday individuals through one-on-one sessions and global seminars. Elliott's impact also transcends into the digital realm. His candid conversations on the Menace to Sobriety podcast have resonated deeply, sparking dialogues about addiction and self-discovery. So, without further ado, let's welcome Elliott. Welcome to the show, Elliott. Fantastic to have you on. How are you?
I'm pretty fantastic. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, good. Me too, very much so. Super aligned with the wonderful things that you have been doing and are doing in the world. And really fascinated by not just the things that you're doing, but obviously the underlying tools that you're using, which we're a big advocate of here as well at 1 Year No Beer. But before we get on to those wonderful tools, why don't you share with us a bit about your journey? You know, what inspired you to study hypnosis? What inspired you to look into NLP and psychology and really craft out where you...
Well, that's a big question, I'll tell you, because that takes me back a little bit. I have to kind of give you some kind of understanding of my life. So I had what we call a challenging upbringing. My dad was stabbed to death in front of me when I was 6 years old by a guy that was drunk. A month later, I was shipped off to a boarding school for high achievers. Didn't come home for 3 years, no school holidays, no summer holidays, no Easter. Came home at 9 years old and I had remarried. This man was to be my father, who in my head I called the pig, who would beat me, cane me, punish me, belittle me, whip me until I bled, stand over me and urinate on me. And I think there were two things that came out of that. Well, hindsight's a valuable thing, and how we deal with something that happened to us is an important lesson in life. So for me, two things came out of it. The first thing was that stereotypical, I never want to get hurt again. So I found myself gravitating to a gym, training really hard, wanting to be big and strong so no one hurt me. That was the first thing. Ran away from home at 14 and a half years old, between sofa surfing, living on the streets. And I think that I just found, first of all, I was very angry at the world. And for a period of my time, from 14 to 21-ish, I was quite violent. When I say violent, I didn't cause trouble. But if there was trouble, I always gravitated to it. It was like my way of dealing with things. And so at the age of 19, I'm 19 stone, 5% body fat, training 6 days a week like an absolute, ferocious person. And with that came along friends of mine who worked in clubs and bars, and I would be VIP'd into any club anywhere in London. And initially for me, there were two stories going on at the same time. Initially they would start giving me drugs, cocaine. At the same time as that happened, I found myself studying psychology because I wanted to help people. So there were two different parallels going on. One, I started psychology because I wanted to help people, because I believe that what happens to you can do one of two things. You can allow that to affect the rest of your life and constrain you, or it can open up a window of opportunity to realize that wasn't right or do things differently. So I studied psychology. Then I met a guy called Paul McKenna in hypnosis, and Paul and I really hit it off. He was back in the 90s on TV all the time. And
it's probably the most famous hypnotherapist, right?
Absolutely.
Well, certainly if you're in the UK or Europe, but...
Certainly if you're in the UK at an age bracket of, I'd say, 40 plus, definitely. And Paul and I hit it off. I spent a good few years studying with Paul. I then met through Paul a guy called Dr. Richard Bandler, super intelligent guy, co-creator of NLP. I then met John Grinder through another friend of mine, the other creator of NLP. Judith Lozio, Richard Bandler, Robert Dilts, all these people who were big names in linguistics. And so I spent years and years studying with them. While that was going on, I was out going to clubs and pubs, and people were giving me a ticket, grab it. And I was using it on a social level myself. And then my career began to blossom. I was on ITV every morning, dealing with phobias. I had TV shows in Australia, Germany, America. I was doing radio interviews all the time. I wrote my first book that was published. Things were going great. Except for now I was in a situation where it wasn't just an occasional use of every other weekend, because now I'm in a financial situation that I can afford to use. And the problem with any addiction, no matter what it is it creates triggers, right? So you start using about its social, occasions like Bandler. And then it becomes dealing with your emotions. Had a bad day, had a good day, celebrating, finished work early, got the weekend. All of these things that became embedded in my unconscious mind as triggers happened to me. So I'm using every other weekend. Now all of a sudden I've got a contract on ITV and I'm earning good money, right? But I finished work by 11 a.m. And what do? Pick up a little ticket. So by now I'm using a 0.4 every day of the week. So now my addiction has gone from once every few months to once a day. So I'm on the TV and I'm using a gram a day. And my kids used to come home and watch whatever phobia I dealt with on ITV This Morning Show. And one day I'm looking at this and I've gone, wow, I look red, right? I've got to do something about this. And I went, listen, I am this psychologist who's got all these years of experience of hypnosis, linguistics, psychology, psychotherapy, psychodynamic therapy. I studied all of them over a period of 8 years. And I went, I've got to do something about it. So I cancelled all my TV contracts within about a month. I read every book on addiction, downloaded every thesis paper, and that was my journey to stopping myself. This is 2008. And then I wanted to help other people and dedicate my life to helping other people deal with their addictions. And really that's kind of how it took me on that path. And it's funny because there's one thing I do want to say. Because people talk about my upbringing and what I went through and where I'm at. And there was a couple of things that happened in my life that made a huge change at that time. And one of them was a magazine I read. And there's a center spread in this magazine. And on the left-hand side, there's one tween. He's being interviewed. He's on death row. And they said to him, the journalist says, why do you think, what do you attribute to being on death row? And he said, I grew up with an alcoholic, abusive father who was always beating me and my twin, who was always beating my mother, who was always committing petty crime, who was always in and out of prison. How do you think I was going to grow up? I killed 3 people. On the other side of the center spread is his twin, and his twin works for the Innocent Project. So what he does is he finds people who've been incarcerated for 20 plus years, where there is unequivocal DNA that this person is innocent. And he's a defender of the public people. And the journalist says, what do you attribute to being this defender of the public people? And he said, I grew up with an alcoholic, abusive father who was always beating me and my twin, always beating me and my brother, who was always committing petty crimes, always in that prison. How did you think I was going to grow up? And it was that one of these things at that time that I went, it doesn't matter what happens to you. Yes, you might need to deal with it, but it's how you choose to use what happens to you. And that was profound for me.
Mm. Super powerful. And I think I've heard, we've actually had a guy on the podcast. He was one of the top gang leaders in one of the worst US prisons. And he'd very much chosen to go down that path. And he had a moment of realization and flipped to the other side entirely. And what's interesting now is he goes into prisons and talks about this choice of using the two alternatives here. And he's like, I could run a prison like this tomorrow to these guys. So he creates that respect with that conversation because he was one of the most renowned and most violent. And now the work that he does is so powerful in helping people to rehabilitate and really get back into life and make these significant changes. And I think, from that level, okay, that's one extreme, which we can say. And similarly, even on the lightest extreme, the person listening to this podcast, who's like, well, I didn't really have that much of a traumatic childhood, or I didn't really have that much of a problem, I guarantee you there's still stuff back there. And unless you're aware of it, unless you're using that for good, right, then it's probably driving behaviors for bad. So I think what you've said there, that way you choose to use it, I think transcends all stories, everyone, about how they choose to behave. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think it doesn't matter how big a thing happens to you or how small a thing happens to you. It's making sure you've got the tools to address that issue, that challenge, however small. It doesn't matter how small it is to somebody else. It matters how much it affects you.
Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of people then mask those problems with, using
drugs, alcohol.
cocaine.
It's the only way to cope. It's the only way to. But the thing is, and people are not aware of it, right? So they're in second or third divorces, or they attract significantly, they attract problematic relationships, or they work for bosses who are total assholes, or they find careers that are destructive for them, or they have it showing up in childhood and things like that. It's like they aren't doing the math. The math is you have stuff that you need to fix. You have stuff you need to resolve because you're creating this. You're making this happen. But let's go back for a second because you found this place of addiction yourself, or rather, what we would term as significant compulsion.
Yes, absolutely.
And you addressed that personally. Can you just tell me a bit about what journey you went on to address that personally, more specifically?
Basically, I had all the tools that I used to help other people. I'd already studied the hypnosis and psychology and linguistics. And it was a question of, the methodology that I used to help other clients of mine now break their addiction, specifically cocaine addiction and some alcohol addiction. It is really the journey that I took myself. And I think what makes me unique, it sounds so egotistical, but I'm just being honest. Yeah, absolutely, right? Is the fact that I've been there. I bought the T-shirt. I understand them. I empathize because I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like when somebody says to you, I know I shouldn't use, I know I shouldn't drink, I know I shouldn't do this, but it's like a mosquito bite. It's bitten me, right? And it's here, and I know I shouldn't itch it. And it's okay while I'm focused on not itching it. But the moment that my attention is taken somewhere else, and I forget about the mosquito bite, that in fact I'm not supposed to itch it, then I scratch it. And the moment I scratch it, it itches even more. And that's what it's like, right? So what I do is I use a variety of tools to change that mindset.
Completely. This is something really foundational, Elliott, that I think is really important that we just dive into for a second, because out there in the world, there is very much this rhetoric around addiction, that if you are an addict, then you must go and be treated as an addict over here, which may be clinical drugs. It could be that you're going to have a disease for the rest of your life. It could be all of this sort of subject matter. But what you're suggesting, and you're suggesting that the work you do is working with people who have severe compulsion. Compulsion, severe compulsion, problematic compulsion, and addiction, and severe addiction. And you're helping them, change that for good using words? Is that what you're saying?
So there's different structures. Using words, absolutely, because, words impact our emotional responses. How we perceive something has a fundamental effect on our behavior. If we constrain ourselves in the world, we are not able to achieve things. So using words, using strategies. So, one of the things I would do, let's just use a cocaine addict. Let's say somebody that I see uses a 4 gram 7 days a week, okay? My first step would be to change their processes of thinking, take what I call their impulsivity, because people who use are more impulsive. There's a propensity of people who are more impulsive to use over and above others whose impulsivity is very low, okay? So what I do is I put in a buffering effect so they can think about their decision before they finally make that decision. That's one thing I do. I'm also a great believer in addictive personalities. You know, and when I look at myself, I'm going to go, hey, I have an addictive personality. You know, when I was using gear, it was daily. You know, when I'm in the gym, it's daily. When I work, it's 30, 40 hours a day.
Oh, part-time.
Part-time. So, yeah, absolutely. But so what I'm going to do is I want to use that addictive trait they have with them, right? So instead of trying to turn it off, which is what a lot of people do, because I did a lecture to 500 doctors at an addiction conference. And I said, I like to make my clients more addictive. And they looked at me like, what? You want to make your clients more addicted? And I'm like, yeah. But I want to change their addiction to something that's beneficial. Exercise, I believe, is a great structure. I get all my clients to do some form of exercise because it gives you structure, right? If you're used to using in the evening, you're like 6, 7 o'clock. If you're then going to the gym or playing squash or going for a run or cycling, and you do that 8 o'clock, by the time you get back, it's 9:30 at night. You're tired, you eat, day's over, you go to sleep. You've got structure in your life. And you release that serotonin, those good feelings.
Totally.
So why not become addicted to something that's beneficial for you? And they were like, we shouldn't be addicted. I said, listen, addicted to drugs and alcohol, addicted to exercise. I know which one I'm going to choose every day of the week. So I'm a great believer in that. That's another, strategy we're going to use. We create structure in your life, have things to do, have a plan in place. What are you going to do Friday night? Where are you going to go Saturday? Are you going to spend time with your family? What commitment have you already made today? But next week, the week after, the week after that. And then on top of that, so we've got structure in their life, we've got activity in their life. Now it's about changing their emotional responses, right? Because a lot of it is, using is a temporary relief for a problem. But that problem just comes back to them. So it's about finding a better way of dealing with that problem, changing the way they look at it. Then I use some techniques, very simplistic techniques. Compulsion to repulsion. So it's a very common technique, but I've got a twist on it. Because the twist I have on it is this. It's taking the same thought of compulsion, attaching it to the repulsion, but the repulsion of what happens if they use. Right?
Yes, great.
So I take that and I bring this here.
Maximize the hangover, minimize the feeling in the moment, which is the truth, right? That's just awareness. And this is like we were talking about the wonderful work of Dr. Anna Lemke before, right? We know a dopamine pain pleasure balance. And we know that long tail after that huge amount of spike of pleasure is lots of pain. So really you're just dragging the attention of people to that so that in the moment, they're going to play it forward very quickly, subconsciously and go, why do I want to feel like shit for 3 days? Why do I want to be anxious, depressed, sad? Yeah, lovely.
And you've got to remember this. Let me just say that. You've got to remember this, right? Inside of our memories, we have a deletion and distortion mechanism. So even that evening...
It's why we have kids.
Yeah, that's true. So even that evening, 4 a.m., where you really believe, like, oh, I'm never doing that again. Fucking hell, what a mess. Thomas was... And they believe it. They believe it, right? Because that memory is so profoundly strong. The problem is, over the next day, till the next evening, or if they don't use the next day and it's 2 days, that memory begins to delete itself. And so they've forgotten all about it, right?
Why does that delete? Why does that delete when, why does that delete?
I think it deletes because it's not as important for them to remember that moment in time. And there's a part of them that it's the devil on shoulder and the angel on the other. And the angel's going, no, don't do it. The devil's going, yeah, just have a bit. No, don't drink. Yeah, but just have some. No, don't use drugs. Yeah, but just have a bit. And there's this inner civil war. And I think the deletion is the devil taking control of your mind. I'm not religious out there, but I'm just giving an example.
Exactly, yeah.
So I think that you've got to remember that memory deletes itself and becomes further and further away. And it's about bringing that memory back. And there's something that Anna Lemke talks about, which I really love. She talks about pain and pleasure, how it's co-located in the brain. But I like to go one further than that. And that is what I'm going to say is this. Human nature is about avoiding pain and seeking pleasure, right? Now, we try and avoid pain. If you put your hand around a ring and you burn yourself, you go, oh, I'm not going to do that again. You want to seek pleasure. But most things in life have an element of pain before we get pleasure. So we go to work, we'll call that pain. To get paid to buy nice things, we'll call that pleasure. We learn to drive a car, we'll call that pain. To have the freedom to get around, we'll call that pleasure. That's how life works. However, when you're looking for alcohol or drugs, right, there's a perception of pleasure first, and the pain comes later on. The drivers are the wrong way round. So what I do is I switch the drivers back so they're reminded of the pain before they have any perception of pleasure. That's what happens.
I love that. And is that using NLP, or is that also hypnotherapy, or both combined? Or
so I don't really look at it and go, where does one line start or one line stop? I just combine everything together. I've kind of gone, look, listen, if you use hypnosis, why just use hypnosis if you know how to use linguistics? If you know how to use hypnosis and linguistics, why not use psychodynamic therapy? If you know how to use psychodynamic therapy, why not use psychology? I think what makes what I do different is this. A hypnotherapist will use hypnotherapy, a linguist will use linguistics, an addiction counselor. So what I did is I went, I'm an addict. What do I need as an addict that's different, right? There's no point just having a screwdriver and a hammer if you need a spirit level, and a drill. So I take a multitude of different tools and I design it for that specific client. Listen, no two clients are the same. You can't use a cookie cutter mold and go, this guy uses every day or drinks every day. This guy drinks with his partner once a month, but binges 2 or 3 days. You can't use that same model. You can't use a cookie cutter mold. So the first thing I do with a client is I spend the first session getting to understand their usage, their frequency, their quantity, their values, their beliefs, their financial capacity, where they got to, how they got to it, everything about them. Then you can begin to tailor everything specific to that individual person. And I think that makes a huge difference.
Let's pause just for a brief moment. I just want to share with you some of the heartfelt feedback from our incredible Complete Control community members. Listen to this.
I don't know how I signed up. I think I just got an ad on Instagram and just got a whim, just hit the button and did a call and then signed up and didn't really consciously think much about it. Then after that, I was like, what did I just sign up for? Wait a second here. Like, far exceeded my expectations. I'm usually extremely skeptical, so I don't know how I even signed up in the first place, but whatever it was. So it's just amazing how, like, the transformation that I've seen, and even the drinking part is just kind of the it was the Achilles heel, but it's kind of just the superficial problem. And it's like, once I kind of clear that up, there's so much more possibility. And the exploration discussions with Gary, with Candace have just been so powerful, and they both kind of focus on a different area. And then with Glenn kind of looking at my data, and with my cohorts or classmates, or, it's just been everything has just been so powerful and kind of supportive of, completing the whole picture of how I do this. So just really grateful and also just feel more grateful, and not only just for all of you, but just in life in general. It's just a little bit more clarity and peace and calm and so forth. So
I am incredibly grateful for this entire program, everybody on this call, and everything that we were able to experience. I think that it delivered more than I expected. Honestly, I like I've said before, I've done a couple of challenges and different things. And I think that this, beyond examining my relationship with alcohol and making, I think, pretty good strides in staying alcohol free. I think it taught me a ton about myself and how to examine my habits and my thoughts and those kind of patterns and ways to approach the things that worried me the most in this experience have just been invaluable. I think I'm leaving feeling stronger in general. more self-aware in general, and just really more anchored in who I want to be and what my values are and how I can, take better steps to achieve those. So it's been fantastic for me. And then again, our team, I really appreciate all the feedback and support from every single person on this call, but my cohort as well. It's been great.
So I love everybody that I've met here. I have loved the program. I am not an emotional person like this, but this has changed my life. It has given me a life. And there's other things I need to do too. But I don't have to do with alcohol anymore. So thank you.
It's been an amazing journey, and I appreciate the professionalism. Whenever I feel the stress, there's something that I can go back to everybody, and the sharing from everybody and the professionalism of the program. So I loved it, and I've grown a lot. So, lots and kisses.
One word is transformational. That's a word that's been bandied about for decades, but in this, it is absolutely accurate. If I was to use one word, this was a great investment. It's not self-help, it's self-realization. It's super powerful, but it exceeded my expectations. Or maybe it was Sharon who said that. Or maybe I'm exceeding my expectations, and I like that.
The program has been I'm hugely grateful for the program. I think the journey for myself has been amazing. I mean, I remember telling, I don't know if it was Candace or Gary, the first 3 or 4 weeks of the program, I was like, I can't stop thinking about not drinking. It's in my head. Every day I'm thinking about not drinking. And it's like now I'm not even thinking about it. It's just like my life has sort of stepped on. I'm excited about the future. Things are looking good.
I just love sharing the things people are saying about our complete control program. Okay, let's get back into the episode. One thing I want to touch on here, I want to touch on, remind me, because I have a tendency to forget, but I want to go into a bit more about the science of hypnotherapy and what's usually used. But I'm going to bet that a huge proportion of people who listen to this, well, actually, maybe that's not true. Let's remove that judgment. I think if you were to call it out to the world out there and say that you work in addiction, that most people are conjuring up an idea of the type of client that walks through your door, okay? And they're probably thinking about somebody who's a bit of a down and out or something like that, right? But I would guarantee that it's the polar opposite of that. So would you like to just describe who is your typical client?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that for you very, very clearly. Listen, my clients range from plasterers, builders, bricklayers, carpenters, everyone in the building industry, right? To surgeons. I've got a pediatric surgeon who I'm helping. All that thumb up, did that teeth. I don't know what that is.
It's copying you. Let's see if it does me. No, it doesn't like me.
I've got a pediatric surgeon who I'm helping over Zoom in France, with an addiction to cocaine, uses daily, right? So that's a surgeon. I've got a judge at the Old Bailey, right? And he sits there and he says to me, Elliott, I was just finished a murder case, and before I sentenced, I went in the chambers, had a quick shot of whiskey, did a quick line, came back out and went, 27 years. And I was like, whoa, right? So judges, I have CEOs of huge corporations. I have people who sit on the board of huge charity organizations. I have professional athletes professional boxers at the top of their career, when they're not fighting or getting ready for a competition or getting ready to fight.
You've worked with Colin Jackson.
You would be shocked at the people that I see. Twice a week I work out of a private hospital.
Yeah.
And I've probably seen 20, 30 doctors this year alone who've come to see me who have a dependency to alcohol or drugs. It's not this
hugely stolen.
Yeah, it's not this person who this perception of is sitting on the street corner sipping a brown paper bag with alcohol in it. And it's definitely not.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely rife in the city, and executives and leaders and all of that there. And I think we're not doing enough. We're not doing enough.
I have to be. I agree. I have a couple of people who work in the city who were traders, financial traders.
Yeah.
It was it. And they say to me, it's almost literally expected to take clients out and use the client to get them on that level, to feel comfortable with them. It's always like, oh, they share a special secret. Now they're going to spend more money.
Absolutely. It's super, super rife. So, and I think where we're trying to be at as well, in conjunction with the wonderful work that you are doing, is try to be more preventative for people before, they get into a more serious state, and try and help people head off the paths at an earlier stage by putting these things into their life and making these changes. But dialing back into hypnotherapy, because
sure,
when we designed our program, hypnotherapy over the years, hypnotherapy's kind of gone in and out of vogue and in and out. And if you look at the science now, like absolutely irrefutable. But so tell us a bit about the science behind hypnotherapy, maybe some of your results or efficacy. Like, what are you seeing?
Listen, first of all, let me just say this. I think a lot of people have a misconception about hypnosis. They see this stage hypnotist and he's waving this watch or this pressure and impression. Suddenly, yeah, absolutely unconscious. And let me just tell you this, right? That is far from what I do. But I'm going to tell you a story. I've been doing this for 28 years. So I would say 27 years ago, I was going to, it was a Spanish island. There was a stag do back in the day when I partied with some friends of mine. I'd been qualified about a year. And we went to a bar, big bar. And they sit in the bar. There was a stage hypnotist going to be there tomorrow night. And everyone's like, oh, that's you, Elliott. We'll come back tomorrow. So there I am. And I've gone back to this bar the next day. There's about 700 people in this bar, huge. Grand Canary, that's where it was. And I said, oh, it was a stage hypnotist. He said, the stage hypnotist isn't here today. And all these people were waiting for this stage hypnosis show. And the guy said, and my mate said, oh, will you do it? And I was like, me? And they're like, yeah. I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I said to the bar owner, I'll do it. And he was like, what? I was like, I'll do it. Just get my friends drinks. I don't want anything. I'll do it. So I got up on stage and did the stage hypnosis show. And the reason I did it was because I understood the stage hypnosis is very different to clinical hypnotherapy where you're looking for an end result, right? I knew the people who wanted to be on stage, I had to elicit the right people. So I started off with, okay, I want people to come on stage who want to have a really good time, who want to be the stars of the show. So when you think about what I've asked for, I want people to come on stage who want to have a good time.
Comply, yeah.
Comply. You want to be the stars of the show. Comply, right? And then I know I've got 50 people, but I only want 10. And I start getting rid of them as I start progressing up what I want them to do. And their compliance becomes more and more. That's stage hypnosis. It's not hypnosis. It's about a whole psychological compliance, evaluation, and change. What I do is far more technical, right? But what I do, nobody will ever see coming. Let's give you an example of how people experience hypnosis. Let's change it for a different word. Let's use the word influence, okay? Because that's what we are. We're all influenced, right? So you go to the supermarket. Let me ask you a question. What do you think are the two most common items purchased in the supermarket?
Milk and bread.
They are. And you'll never find bread and milk in the entrance. Why not?
Because people always go for that, and they're going for that, and they'd rather get them to get everything else either in the way there or the way back out.
So they want to put it either at the middle of the store or at the end of the store. So they know you've got to walk through the store to get the two items that you came in to purchase, and you end up buying things you do not intend to buy. You were hypnotized, or you were influenced, whatever word you want to use. And when you come out of the store without even thinking about it, you go to a casino, no windows, no clocks. There's always the sound of a machine paying out. Why? Because it's subliminally going to affect you, continue to be there. That's hypnosis. That's influence, right? You take the kids to a theme park. You always have to walk out of the theme park, through the souvenir shop. Why? Because they're going to influence you to purchase products. Social media these days, they're even called influencers. They even use the right word. They're influencers to sell a product, to influence you to buy it. That's hypnosis. Okay. So it's the art of putting suggestions in someone's mind that they don't even see how it's woven together to make a difference within them. But what it is about is changing their emotional reaction so they don't want to use, they don't want to drink, they don't want to do that. But I also have another little trick up my sleeve. So sometimes I have people that say, I don't want to stop drinking because I still want to do it socially. I just want to drink. And I say, well, what amount do you call, a comfortable level? And they said to me, what about if I could go out and just drink a glass of wine? I was like, okay, a glass of wine, we can do that. So here's what I would do with someone who wants to drink a glass of wine. Who would drink 2 bottles of wine previously. I like studying human behavior. So 2006, I developed a board game that taught psychology students how to revise for their degree. I had this concept of this board game, and I phoned up to colleagues of mine. I said, listen, I've got this idea of this board game. We're going to develop it. And they were like, yeah, we're on board. We wrote 300 questions. We designed the board game. We had little brains. So you expand your brain as you move around the board game. And we got close to completion. But at the time, I was doing a lot of seminars in Australia. I was in McCarthy Medical Center in Manila lecturing in the Philippines, back and forward as they were. Me in Alicante in Spain, I had it for some 25, 28 years. And I said to them, listen, I've got a little 2-bedroom apartment. Why don't we just go out there, turn our phones off, 3 or 4 days, we'll get it complete. They're like, okay. So we go out to my place in Spain. Now, I like food. I'm a little foodie. I eat healthy, but the days I'm not, I want to enjoy my food. Now, I like steak, but I like quality steak. So I said to them, let's go to this steak restaurant. They're like, okay. So we go to this steak restaurant, and one of my colleagues says to me, well, can I order a bottle of wine? I was like, well, we're going to split the bill, do what you like. I don't drink personally, right? And he orders a bottle of wine. I remember 2007, 2006, 50 euros. And I'm thinking 50 euros. Damn, that's a lot of money. I mean, if I was going to buy somebody a bottle of wine, as a gift or something, I don't know, £10, £15, 50? I'm not tight. Fucking hell, 50 euros a lot, right? Yeah. Anyway, he has this bottle of wine and he does this and he takes a little smell and he looks at the light and he looks at it and he takes a little sip and he puts a glass down. And I watch him through the evening and he drinks 1 glass of wine. 1. And every time he drinks, he has this little smirk, this little smile. Cork shit, takes a bottle home. We were there 3 nights. We took it all 3 nights and he didn't even finish the bottle. He tipped some of it away before we left. So I'm on the plane on the way home and I turned to him and I said, what are you doing with this glass of wine? Explain to me, because I love learning from people. He said, I look at the colour, the clarity, the reflection of light on the surface of the glass. I take in the aroma of the bouquet. I allow all the 1,000 taste buds on my tongue to enjoy the taste of the wine. What he said to me was this: I enjoy enormous gratification from a small quantity of wine. So there all of a sudden, there was a strategy that I could take from this guy and implement into other clients so they could just drink 1 glass of wine.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they weren't getting the pleasure and enjoyment.
Yeah, they're missing all of the mindful moment. It's not about the thing, right? It's just about the result. And if you get them to think about the thing and the moment and all of those things and the complexities of it, then that's amazing. I love that. It's very powerful.
So I use the hypnosis to re-put that strategy back in their own head. Yeah, that's how I use hypnosis.
So talking from that, are you able to get somebody from what would be considered very significant problematic drinking or even cocaine usage? I mean, forget cocaine usage, because I imagine for most people you just want to get them to stop. I mean, it's just a really shit drug. But with alcohol, because it's so prevalent, socially normal, you get people to go to a more controlled drinking place where they that one of us.
So I will apply. So a lot of my clients are predominantly cocaine. I would say 80% of my cocaine, which means alcohol was the gateway to use cocaine.
Totally. It always starts with a drink and then it goes to the ticket.
That's what happens. Because I always say to people, listen, I did this video once and I had a little dessert jar. And in that dessert jar, I put a pickled onion. And I took some of the pickled onion juice and I poured it in the jar till the pickled onion was half covered. I said, that's the equivalent of a glass of wine. Now, if I pour more in, add 2 glasses, 3 glasses, 2 pints, 3 pints, 4 pints, until the pickled onion's completely covered. That pickled onion represented your brain. Now your brain's pickled. You can't even think straight. So it's about reducing the quantity down. Now, if they see me because they're dealing with a cocaine habit and alcohol is a gateway, I really want to stop the alcohol for the first month. After that month, the second thing I like to do is change the drink they're now going to drink, because they have an association.
Oh, totally. Pint test ticket.
SDLNB, state-dependent alert memory behavior. They access a certain state associated with using, and that's what they do. If we completely change their drink, and we completely change the strategy of how they drink, so their brain is now looking in a different way. It's pleasure, it's enjoyment. From such a small quantity. 1 glass, 1 pint, 2 at the max. That's it. So that's what we implement. Yeah.
But LA, I know, because I've been in this industry of helping people change their relationship with alcohol for nearly a decade now.
Yeah.
And have helped hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. You only have to take one look at our social media and Facebook ads to see a plethora, an army of people out there who say what we do is impossible. They say taking somebody from significant addiction to being able to control it is impossible. You cannot moderate, you cannot control. They're going to have a disease for the rest of their life. So please join me now in telling the world that that is absolute bullshit.
I'm going to prove it to you, because I'm going to say that when I used to do TV This Morning show, I never knew what phobia was going to be presented to me. Okay, I would turn up at the TV studios, and they would say to me, "El, this person's got a phobia of birds, and at the end of this program, which is 2 hours, we're going to put them in this cage full of birds." A person was freaking out, right? Or they might say to me, "This person has a fear of needles, and at the end of it, we're going to get Dr. Prestil to give her an injection live on air." Now, I've just proven live on air, no editing, no cutting, no putting together, live. I took somebody who had a problem, something in their brain that they didn't think they could deal with or overcome, to the point where in front of millions of people, they were able to do that. Not using stage hypnosis, using hypnosis, psychology, linguistics. If they can do that in the space of 2 hours, how much simpler is it to reduce the quantity of alcohol, stop using drugs, because it all comes from in here. If you change in here first, you change your behavior. And every behavior, let's think about this, every behavior you learn, right? You weren't born an alcoholic. You weren't born with an addiction to cocaine. You learned it. You taught yourself. And all learning is repetition. When you're born with a limited functionality. Cry, sleep, toilet, feed, everything else you learn to do. You learn to walk, you learn to talk, you learn to drive, you learn to use a phone, you learn to do everything you now do. Now, the moment you learn to do something, let's use driving. Clutch, mirror, indicator, accelerator. Once you consciously learn and you get conscious competence, it goes into your unconscious. Let's say a ball wraps around it to protect it, to ensure you don't forget the very thing you learned to do, right?
Yeah.
So now you've got these habits that are really good. Driving, using the phone, cooking, millions, right? But there is no filter mechanism to distinguish between positive, good, negative, or bad. Good or bad. Exactly. So now you learn bad habits in your life, but they also become protecting, because your mind doesn't understand. Now, who's protecting it? You are. It's protecting your unconscious mind. That unconscious mind is developed from the moment you're born. Upbringing, education, your values, what's important to you, your beliefs, your limited beliefs, or your beliefs you can achieve something, your personal beliefs or factual beliefs. So factual belief the world's round, someone tries to disprove it, comes up with the same concept, factual belief. Personal belief could be a religion, a faith that you believe to be true, and you live your life accordingly. Then you have your experience. And in the blink of an eye, all that information is computed for you to make a decision here. So everything you do is computed in here. It's like you've got this brain computer that you develop software, right? Now think about your experience. Let's say you and all the people listening don't like red apples. and I say, here's a red apple, and you will go, we don't like red apples. Right. And I go, why don't you like red apples? Now, the answer is telling, because people will say, because I had one yesterday, last week, last month, a year ago, 5 years ago. In other words, you're making a decision of what you don't like based on your past experience. To some degree, that's how it must be. How else do we know what movies we like, music we like, food we like, drinks we like? So we're making decisions based on all of that unconscious processing. We're making decisions to use or to drink at that level based on the things we taught ourselves. If you taught yourself something, you can relearn something. Now, you can use psychological tools that can speed up that relearning process. And that, in a nutshell, is what it is.
Yeah, amazing. So, and I love that, exactly what you've said, because I think a lot of people try and figure this stuff out themselves, and they try, and they use willpower, they try to do a bit of abstinence, they maybe read a book here and again.
But can I just pick up and say, sorry, one thing you just said, willpower. I love this. People say to me, Elliott, you must have so much willpower. I say, I don't believe in willpower. Willpower doesn't exist. And they go to me, well, how do you go to the gym every day? And I go, because I love it. Passionate. If you're passionate about something, you don't require willpower. We use willpower on something that we personally predetermine is going to be challenging.
Don't want to do. Yeah, exactly. Something we don't want to do. And therefore, it's only a preordained outcome that it's going to either deplete or run out or all of those things. And it's like, let's stop. I mean, and this is one of the big things. I'm like, please, will everybody stop going in search of more willpower? Please. And instead, shortcut the journey and work with somebody who's, just like you said, going to help you relearn, change these tools. And I think that's where, the perfect example is, people who are like, right, I'm going to go and get a six-pack and I'm just going to try and figure it out myself. Or hire somebody, get it done in a short period of time. I got a tiny story to add into here, right? I wanted to do the Mallorca 312, 312 kilometer cycle around Mallorca. And so I headed out, enthusiastically cycling everywhere, just absolutely going for it. And when it came to race day, I set off. I got to the turnoff for 167, like half the journey. I was destroyed. I took off. So I finished at 167, and I was really frustrated with that. Then I hired a coach. And my coach said to me, just to let you know, I've seen your data. You will never do the Mallorca 312. And I was like, what do you mean? Of course I will. I'm a determined human being. I'm going to go make it happen. He said, no, you'll never do it. I said, why? He said, because the way you are cycling, you physically cannot sustain that high level of endurance at that level. What I need you to do is go around and cycle at volume 2, like you're reading a newspaper, for 10 hours. So I did that, smashed the Mallorca 312. And that's the difference of working with somebody who knows what they're doing, right? That's the difference of working with somebody who's worked with hundreds, thousands of people to shortcut down this journey of just getting it fixed.
I think that fits with everything, though, right? So, for example, right, I am DIY useless, right? And I'm going to show you my wall. You'll see that it's really covered by articles I've been in, newspapers I've been in, etc. And they're all laid out nicely, right? They're all laid out.
You didn't do that.
Now, here's my point. I got a carpenter in to come and put the pictures up, right? I could have probably done it. It might have taken me weeks. 2 hours, he done it. Why?
Yeah.
Because I hired somebody who knows what he's doing, who does it every day of the week, who's got thousands of hours of experience to help do something I did not know how to do. That's how life is.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what your own teeth out when you got teeth like, do you?
I try to avoid the dentist as well. Yeah, I mean, Elliott, I absolutely...
I'll show you something. Let me just see something. Everybody who can watch this, do this, right? Talk about dentists. Take 2 fingers and a thumb.
Yep.
And do that.
Okay.
Although, and let go, and you'll see your mouth is slightly numb. It's like an anesthesia. You feel that?
Right.
So this is hypnosis, right? By doing that, the only person who's ever put their thumb or finger in your mouth like that is a dentist. Your brain automatically links to that trigger of the dentist doing that, and you get a very slight anesthesia in your mouth from doing it.
Wow. Because of those ingrained patterns.
Because of the pattern that you've learned. So every pattern is stored, but every pattern can be relearned.
Yeah. I mean, like you, Elliott, I think this is the basis of everything, right? The stories we tell ourselves, the patterns, a lot of them are from our past traumatic experiences, which is what you've done, and they're running on autopilot. And until we resolve those, change them, change our perception of them, you're going to be using willpower, or you're always going to fall back. And I think there's a multitude of ways to get there. And I think that's what's amazing about the work that you're doing, bringing in these various different tools to work with individuals.
So I've got one thing I've got to say. I started putting, a friend of mine said about 18 months ago, Ellie, you should put a video on TikTok. And I was like, TikTok? That's a 10-year-old. He's like, no, put a video about cocaine addiction on TikTok. And you know what? In 18 months, he's had 75 million views. That shows you, just with that one addiction alone, how huge the problem is.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, do you know what?
Why is it getting worse?
Well, I think there's several reasons. I think one of the reasons was the pandemic. Certainly had an effect. I think people who had money because they were on furlough. They had no structure, no reason to go out, nowhere to go. And the only person running around was their dealer dropping off or alcohol being delivered. So I think, or their shopping being delivered with alcohol or their drug dealer. So I think their usage went up. I see this a lot, that they went up from using maybe once a week to twice a week, 4 times a week, 5 times. That's certainly had an impact, definitely. And I think that we are a nation of seeking pleasure and dopamine, definitely, right? Yeah. That's the second thing. And I think that now we have less things to do. Like, if we were to go back years ago, we'd have to make a fire. We'd have to hunt our food. We'd have to sit it, cook it, eat it, survive, right?
That sounds like last week for me.
Now we come home, and what do you do? Sit down, turn Netflix on, you're bored. And people are looking for the thrill. Hello, mate, can you drop one off? That's what they do. Get a 6-pack from the corner when you're there. That's what happens.
So what do you think the solution is?
I don't know if there is a solution in terms of what is a solution in terms of how the world's going to get off gear. But I think there's a solution when each individual person reaches a point where they suddenly realize this isn't the road they want to be on. And for some people, that could take a long time. If I look through the thousands and thousands of comments I get on my social media, and especially on TikTok, because there's an anonymity behind it, and people don't have to use their real name. So they're more vocal, right? They're like, I think he's great. I think he's amazing. And my answer is always the same. Said every addict once. And I think people don't realize until they reach a point. Listen, there isn't a single person with any form of addiction who at the beginning thought they would end up where they're going to end up.
No, exactly. Who was consciously saying, I won't be that bad. It won't go there for me. We talk about that a lot. Yeah.
And then they're denial. I'm not as bad as John. I'm not as bad as Fred.
Exactly.
I don't drink every day.
Especially with alcohol, because you're like, oh, this is totally normal. Everyone's doing it. But there's nothing wrong with you. You're a light drinker. And then the conversation has got to switch to, look, it's not about having a problem. Is it causing you problems? Do you feel like it's holding it back? Because if it is, then it is. Amazing to have you on the show, Elliott. Where do people find out more about you and the wonderful work you're doing?
So you can go to my website, which is www.hypnosis-expert.com. You can go to my TikTok. Funny enough, there's going to be a theme here at hypnosis_expert. You can go to my Instagram at hypnosis_expert, basically hypnosis expert, or Google me, Elliott Wald, always spelled WALD, Whiskey Alpha, Lima Delta. Get in touch, watch my videos, I want to help, and see how you can learn from things that I put out, same as you.
Yeah, good man. Oh, amazing. Well, we'll put all those links in the show notes. Thank you so much, and look forward to meeting you in person one day, love what you're doing, and may this be the beginning of an ongoing relationship.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Elliott.